Hello. Today we will be discussing Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 of the book prescribed book for military history, War Despatches, Indo-Pak Conflict 1965, written by Lieutenant General Harbakshi. The Chapter 7 is regarding the logistics sports, and Chapter 11 is about the civilian contribution. First, the logistics sport. The Indo-Pak War 1965 was not only a test of combat power but also a severe test of logistics. In the Western Command, where the heaviest fighting occurred, Kashmir, Punjab, Sialkot, maintaining supply lines for thousands of troops, tanks, artillery, and aircraft was as important as the battlefield tactics. This chapter highlights how logistical support shaped the ability of Indian forces to fight, maneuver, and sustain operations. The scale of the task. West Command controlled multiple corps like the 15 Corps, 11 Corps, 1 Corps, each operating in widely different terrain, which was mountainous, plains, and canal crossed regions. The war demanded a steady supply of ammunition for the infantry and artillery, fuel for tanks, vehicles, and the aircraft, rations and clothing for troops in both plains and high altitude areas, medical evacuation, and care for large number of casualties. And the lines of communications in the Kashmir sector, that is the 15 Corps, depended heavily on the Jammu Srinagar highway, a single lifeline vulnerable to the enemy interdiction. Supplies had to be moved under threat of infiltration and ambush. In Punjab and Sialkot sectors, that is the 11 Corps and the 1 Corps sectors, rail and road networks allowed bulk movement, but enemy shelling and airstrikes targeted bridges and the depots. Canal systems complicated the movement of convoys and the bridging units. The other challenges which were faced by us were Pakistani airstrikes and artillery barrages disrupted supply dumps and convoys. Infiltrators in the Kashmir attempted to sabotage bridges and road convoys. The demand for fuel and ammunition for armor was far greater than the peacetime norms. Existing transport units were stretched to their limits. Constant need for repair of bridges, culverts, and the ferries demanded by shelling of or the sabotage. Bridging equipment was in short supply in Sialkot and Punjab, slowing the armor advances. Medical evacuation in the forward area was often delayed due to the shelling, damaged roads, and limited helicopters. Casualty handling placed a severe strain on the field hospitals. Supply on the high altitude areas. The 15 Corps had to maintain troops in the Ladakh and Titwal, where mule trains and porters remained essential. Weather, landslides, and the altitude sickness added to the logistical difficulties. Despite the challenges, logistical staff and the transport units displayed remarkable improvisation and dedication. Railways and the civil agencies played an important role in the bulk movement of the supplies in Punjab. Engineers worked tirelessly to keep lines open, often under fire. Supplies for the armored formations, though strained, were sufficient to sustain major tank battles at Philora, Chivinda, and Asaluttar. The medical supplies coped under extreme pressure, saving thousands of lives despite limited resources. So the lessons learned is pre-war preparedness, greater stockpiles of ammunition and fuel near forward areas was essential to avoid supply strain. Mobility of logistics, more mobile repair and recovery units were needed to support the advancing armor. Air ground integration, Better use of air transport could have eased supply problems in Kashmir. Engineering assets, adequate bridging equipment, and engineer support were critical in the canal cross terrain. Civil military cooperation, the role of the railways, civilian truck operators, and the state administration was vital, highlighting the need for closer integration in wartime. So, to conclude, we can say the 1965 war underscored the truth that logistics decide the endurance of the combat operations. While the Indian Army fought bravely and secured key victories, its success rested heavily on the ability of the logistical network to keep supplies flowing under constant enemy pressure. The campaign exposed weaknesses in the stockpiling, mobility, and coordination, but also proved resilience of the Indian logistics staff. The lessons of 1965 became the foundation for a more robust logistical doctrine in 1971 war. Now we move to the next lesson, that chapter number 11, civilian contribution. The 1965 war was not fought by the armed forces alone. It was national effort. In this chapter, Lieutenant General Harbakh Singh highlights the vital contributions made by the civil administration, railways, industries, and the ordinary citizens whose support allowed the Western Command to sustain operations and achieve battlefield success. The role of the civil administration. Civilian authorities in Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, and Himachal worked closely with the army to maintain law and order, and despite the enemy shelling and infiltration scares, coordinate evacuation of civilians from border areas to reduce casualties and panic, mobilize home guards and police for the internal security and anti-sabotage duties. District officials played an important part in managing refugee flow and ensuring roads were not clogged during the troop movement. Railway and road transport. Indian Railways provided the backbone for bulk troop and the supply movement for the ammunition, fuel, and rations were delivered rapidly to the forward sectors. Despite enemy air attacks on the railway targets, the network was kept running through prompt repair and rerouting. Civilian truck operators were pressed into service to maintain road convoys, especially where the red heads ended. Coordination between the Army Services Corps and the civil transport authorities allowed flexibility in moving supplies. Industrial and material support. Civilian industries quickly adapted to wartime needs. Workshops and factories carried out urgent repair of the vehicles, weapons, and the communication equipment. Production of spare parts, bridging equipment, uniforms, and the medical supplies was accelerated. Civilian contractors and the engineers supported the army's effort in building or repairing the damaged infrastructure. Medical and welfare services, civil hospitals in Punjab and Delhi took in the large number of war casualties when the military hospitals overflowed. Civil doctors, nurses, and the volunteers provided emergency care. Welfare organizations and the women's group organized blood donation camps, relief supplies, and comfort packages for the troops. Public morale and the civic spirit. The population of the border states endured shelling, evacuation, and disruption with remarkable resilience. Citizens reported suspicious movements helping counter infiltration and the paratroops care. public rallies, donations to war funds, and the volunteer services kept the morale high both in cities and the rural areas. The unity and the patriotism of the civilians reinforced the fighting spirit of the troops at the front. So challenges were faced were rumors and panics occasionally caused a confusion, particularly during the paratroop scare. The sudden displacement of the civilians from the border villages created humanitarian strain. Nevertheless, the civil system adapted quickly, ensuring order and support to the war effort. Regarding the lessons learned, the 1965 war demonstrated the value of close coordination between commanders and the administrators. The civil defense, evacuation planning, and the industrial readiness must be rehearsed in peacetime. Wars cannot be fought without civilian infrastructure. Strengthening them enhances military capabilities. The civil unity and patriotism become force multiplier for the army's morale. So to conclude, we can say 1965 conflict proved that victory is not only won on the battlefield but also supported from the rear. The contributions of the civil administration, transport, industry, medical services, and the ordinary citizen were indispensable to the success of the Indian Army. The resilience of India's people in war was as decisive as the courage of the soldiers. With this, we have come to the end of this part also. Meet you next time. Thank you.